Humans of the cardboard, welcome back to Just Nuts, guys. We've got another Master Duel video. Hopefully this one helps out a lot of new and budget players to the game, because we're focusing on really cheap staples in the game. I know the game's pretty affordable as is, but if you're like me and you want to play a bunch of different decks and you got into the game and you're like just bouncing around buying a bunch of different archetypes, then you realize, I have no staples, I don't have any generic cards, you could be in trouble. So this is going to be a list of all normal and rare cards in the deck, or in the entire game, that are actually decent staples, at least until you work your way up into those having enough super and ultra rare points to go ahead and cop like the actual high rarity staples, because almost all the legit amazing staples in the game are at least super rare, and in most cases, like every single hand trap in the game, they're ultra rares. So without further ado, let's get into this thing because we got a lot of cards to get through. So starting off with the main deck monsters, you got Planet Pathfinder. This is a great tool to be able to search any field spell in the game. Just takes your normal summon, works. Mothman, you could also throw Chupacabra in here, but if your opponent hits Chup, it's probably dead. So just Mothman is the only actual like decent one here. A couple Kaijus, Radian, Godarla, a Thunder King, and Jizukiro. These are great options, especially because there's no siding in the game. So if you do go second, you want to have something in your deck that helps you play into boards, you know, a little bit, and just clearing the best option on your opponent's field. Very, very nice. And honestly, the fact that Godarla is rare is awesome, because he may be the best one overall, because Bird Up is definitely tier 1, and being able to clear that barrier statue is actually really nice. Really cool card, like knockoff, or so Loyal Guan Yun here is an Ancient Warrior card, but he's kind of like a knockoff Pancratop slash what is it, Alpha, the Master of Beasts. So he's like, if your opponent has more monsters than you, or your opponent's the only monster player to control monsters, you can summon him from the hand. Easy, free special summon going second. Then if your opponent controls more monsters than you just target a monster they control and pop it. So it's a free summon, 2500 body, kind of like Pank, right? Kind of like Alpha, big body that's free, and it removes a card, just like those cards as well. Obviously it's not as good as those, but it's a pretty good knockoff version, all things considered. The last main deck monster we have here to look at is Parallel Exceed. Obviously you have to be playing a link deck for this, but as long as your stuff doesn't lock you out of it, this is an insane extender. And if you didn't see it yet, just know it's a normal card, so it's very easy to get, and it's one of the best Cyrus extenders we've ever seen. Moving into the spells, we've got Lightning Vortex. It's knockoff Raigeki. I know you already get Raigeki just by doing solo mode, but this is an additional like board wipe to be able to add to your arsenal going second to hopefully take care of business. Performapal Popper Up. All of the pot cards are at least super rare. I know there's stuff like Upstart is ultra rare. So if you want draw power, need draw power, and you're playing a deck that actually wants to send your hand to the graveyard, or doesn't mind it at least, this card's a great option to help you dig through your deck. The only field spell, well, the only sort of, that I really have here is Extranet. It's a funny card. It's like knockoff Maxi. Definitely not as good going second, but going first, it is insanely scary. Your opponent has to remove this, because if they don't, you're probably going to draw a million cards, because it says, anytime a monster is summoned from the extra deck, the opponent of that player draws a card. And so you'd probably play this in a strategy that isn't going into the extra deck too often. And when your opponent does, you're going draw, 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 draw every time they're going into the extra deck. And that's kind of scary. So definitely an interesting card. Again, it's not as good as Max C, but it is something interesting that can be scary in its own way. Magical Meltdown. I only threw this on here. I know the whole engine isn't all rares and normal cards, but I don't believe there's anything higher than super rare in that package. And for the genericness of this package altogether, that's kind of crazy. Like, I would have guessed that there would be like 3, maybe 4 ultra rares out of this package, and there's none. So I just want to throw it out there. I know it's not technically good in there, so we'll take it out here. Dimensional Fissure, crazy floodgate. Definitely consider it. It's really going to destroy a lot of meta decks out there. Magician's Vestige and World Legacy Guard Dragon, awesome generic reborn spells for dragons and spellcasters respectively, which are 2 of the most popular types in the game. Awesome. MST, I mean, it's just great generic quick play back row removal, like, love it. Offering to the Doom. There's a couple quick plays here that are interesting. This is one of them to me. I know you lose your draw phase next turn, but this card is like really interesting to me. I don't know. It's probably not the best thing in the world, but I feel like it could be decent in a lot of situations. Book of Moon, we know Book of Moon's great. It's a rare, awesome. Enemy controller, kind of specific. Like you have to tribute a monster to really get the best effect out of this, or I guess theoretically in a simplified board state, just changing your opponent's monster to defense mode could be really clutch. But yeah, it's definitely the lesser of these. It's been surpassed by Book of Moon. It's been surpassed by Forbidden Chalice. Is probably the best card on this entire list. This card could probably be played in any deck in the game. It would probably put in work. It's just that good. This card's awesome. Foolish Return. This is an interesting one. Kind of would be like a budget Called by the Grave. It isn't stopping hand traps from hitting you. That's the biggest downside between this and Called. But if you just like the interaction of quick effect graveyard disruption, this card's actually pretty nasty. Just targeting any card in grave and shuffling it back is not bad. Even versus stuff like Outlet, you can even target the spells and traps, which Called by can't, just to get him out of rotation. And that's actually pretty good. Then there's Blizzard. This card kind of helps you nullify one spell card your opponent activates. It does go back to their hand, but they can't activate it again. So that's cool. I'm actually with that 100%. Because it can just slow your opponent down. If you negate the right card, it's going to put you in a good spot. So yeah, pretty good. Into the traps. Dust Tornado. It's MST, but worse. Let's take that out of here. Torrential Tribute. This card's probably the other best card on this list aside from Chalice. A lot of decks can play this, but not everyone. So just make sure you're not playing this in a deck that you're going to punish yourself. Like you don't want to get your own board wiped. Because you want to be able to float off your own Torrential Tribute to get that extra value. Same thing with Needle Sealing. It's almost just as good as Torrential, but does require there to be a little bit more of board presence for it to be live. So, yep, but both great. Compulse, another great generic option. This card has fallen by the wayside since like the mid-20 teens, but this card still is honestly solid. Like actually though. Phoenix Wing Windblast, great card again. Honestly, like the result is better than Compulse, but you do have to discard a card from your hands. So you just need to be playing a deck that doesn't mind discarding. Treasure Strap Hole. This is a really interesting one. It's kind of a Duel Links card, but if you're playing a deck that doesn't really play any traps, maybe this is a card you just consider throwing in as a one-of because it is very powerful, but it's a one-of. So you're not going to see that often, but if you do it, hopefully it'll be clutch. Time Space Trap Hole. It's a decent trap hole. They summon from the hand or the extra deck. You just shuffle it back and take 1,000 for each monster. It's actually pretty decent though. Like not the worst. Olenoids. It is MST, but worse, kind of like how Dust Tornado is, but at least it comes back as a monster later on if more traps are being activated. So we'll take it. Canadia, same thing. Book of Moon, but worse, but comes back as a monster later. So extra value. Dynamiscus, kind of like Wing Blast, but also comes back as a monster later, and you don't have to discard until resolution, which is nice. They're good. They're just generically good cards. These will come up later on in Yu-Gi-Oh! For like a specific new archetype. I know it. Morella, probably not that great. I know it generically sends any trap from deck to grave, but like how many traps are really that great to be sending from deck to grave aside from like getting an L-Lich engine started? Like, come on. Floodgate Trap Hole. This one's probably overall better than Time Space, but you need to be playing a deck that you're not going to get walled by the thing you Book a Moon. So just make sure that's not a problem. Lost Wind, awesome, has been a great budget trap option for a while now. Negates something and makes its attack half permanently. And if your opponent goes in the X-Rec, it resets itself back from grave. This card is an awesome value card, an awesome grindy trap card. I love this card. I really do. Banquet of Millions. This card's pretty good at locking your opponent out of Yu-Gi-Oh! You just get to banish all of their extra deck, but they'll get it back on the end phase. But at least for a turn, it's kind of like as similar as like scything them for a turn. You just say no extra deck this turn, and then you kill them. So actually not bad going first. Divine Wrath, kind of like Solemn Strike, but worse because you have to discard from hand, but still not the worst. Solemn Scolding, very particular decks can play this, but if you wanted just a trap that's gonna kind of cover your ass no matter what's coming your way, it's actually pretty good, right? Negates kind of the whole game, which is good. Broken Line, very specific decks can play this, but it's a very cool card. It can negate anything that it's in the same column with, so you want to go second, set this into a column of something you really know you want to negate, and then on the next turn, you'll break their board on their turn by activating a bunch of traps into their face. So actually kind of funny, actually a decent trap. It just only works in particular decks. And then I threw Fogblade in here. I was thinking about Fiendish Chain, but I was like, why play Fiendish Chain when you can play Fogblade? It's hilarious. So yeah, that's your main deck stuff. Finishing up with the traps, moving into the extra deck real quick. There's literally only one synchro, and to be honest, I only looked at 7s and 8s because a lot of other synchro decks aren't going into other levels as much. Those are definitely the 2 most popular synchro levels. There may be some other cool stuff that's like lower rarity, but feel free to let me know in the comment section down below any extra stuff that isn't on this list. That way people can look through the comments and maybe find some more stuff that's easy to obtain early on. But yeah, Zeta was really the only synchro I found that's like actually like worth mentioning from 7 and 8s. That's low rarity, so tough stuff. For Exceeds, I only looked at rank 4s because those are by far and away the most popular in all of Yu-Gi-Oh! All I found was Evil Swarm Nightmare, but you got to be playing a dark deck, as well as Heartland Draco. Helps you attack directly. If you are playing a Zeus-ish deck, that can set up Zeus pretty well as the fact that punching for 2,000 is actually a lot of damage to punch directly for, so that could actually come up. For links, Imduk, the World Chalice Dragon. This takes any normal monster except a token, and it has a removal effect similar to Relinquished Animus. Not bad for a link 1. Gravity Controller. This card actually comes up in a myriad of different decks, so if you are playing a deck that has extra deck monsters that float, this card is actually pretty cool. Code Talker, kind of just a generic card. Takes any 2 effect monsters. It can get a little bit bigger with this depending on what's pointing to it, and it can get protection. It's fine. Alistair, the Invoker of Madness, isn't as generic. It does take 2 monsters with different types and attributes, but it's an 1800 beater. It points down, and that's all we're really looking for here for the most part if you're playing him generically. Ripperdokus, this is the most generic one out of all of these. It takes any 2 monsters in Yu-Gi-Oh! And then it can then also potentially change your monster's type or change attribute, which is actually can come up. It has come up in certain combos, which is crazy. Geonator Transverser. This card's another cool generic link too. It has like a really high roll effect where you can like creature swap if stuff is in the right zones, but that relies on your opponent. But if you can set it up, it's actually pretty funny. Real quick, we'll come back to that. And then Berserker of the Tenyi, just a generic link 3 to make a big beater, but also clear your stuff. I find that in a lot of decks, sometimes when I'm not sure exactly what to do with what's going on with like my extra deck and I have a couple open slots, I like just having generic links that like, sometimes depending on the strategy, it's just good to have stuff that helps you just clear your monsters into grave. Whether you want them in grave or because you need to clear stuff off your field, it actually can come up. So these are generic ones that can do that pretty well for you. And the last card I want to talk about here is the Charmers. I know they're super rares, but they cover every single type or attribute in Yu-Gi-Oh! Except for Dark right now. So if you're just playing any type deck that's not Dark, you can abuse these, and they're actually kind of insane. If they come up, they can come up so huge, so clutch sometimes, that all you need to do is buy one of them. It's 1 super rare slot. So I threw them on here just in case, because they do cover almost every attribute, and I figured that was worth noting. But we'll take them off here just because it's not technically a rare or a normal. But there you go. There's our list here. Hopefully this helps you. Hopefully this is a great just starting list that you can just immediately, you're immediately going to be able to have a ton of normal and rare tokens, and so you can just scoop almost all these cards in 3-ofs very quickly, whatever you think fits your deck the best, and at least have some competent cards generically until you're able to get to that point where you can start buying the actual high-end staples in the game. But like I said, if I missed anything, feel free to throw it down below. I did a quick skim and I looked to myself. The card pool in this game is huge, so I might have missed a couple things here and there. Definitely throw it down below. Thank you so much for watching as always. I will see you in the next video. Peace.